Welcome, Coleman Report Live, March 25th edition. Katie Wataki, Lance Sexton. We didn't expect you to be. And our stealth guest, Bob Judge of Government Loan Solutions. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you, Bob. Glad to be on.
Bob, you're out of New York. Lance, this is not your normal studio. Where are you? Tell us where you are.
Well, I'm in one of the largest and excitedly, or a very successful Radio Shack store. And I know many of you think that Radio Shack no longer exists, but the individually owned stores do. It's a store that's owned by my dad. I'm here because he's gracious enough to give me some space, and he's got incredible internet. So that's where I'm at. And if you look in the background, guys, you'll see a monitor from the old days. So
how much are you selling that for?
I'm sure my dad would be willing to consider offers on that. So if you need a compact monitor with speakers, it's available.
I think I saw one of those.
So are you next door to a Blockbuster store too, or what?
Well, ironically, you bring up a great point. My dad was in the video rental business for a long time. He has one of the most extensive VHS collections in a building beside me. There are probably 5,000 VHS tapes. So if anybody on the call has an old VHS tape they want, just send me a message.
Hey, let's start with Katie. Katie, bring us up to date on what's going on in Washington, D.C.
Right. So last night around 1 a.m., there came some news from the Senate that they supposedly came to some kind of agreement and are looking at passing this bill probably within an hour or two from right now. They can reconvene at noon, so they're probably discussing that as we speak. And as you can see on the screen, we've got a list of what's in that bill. We're not sure exactly what this text of the bill is going to include, if any of this has changed. This is as of last night.
I guess they were finished writing it, 30 minutes ago, right?
I'm sure I haven't seen the official text. They have not published the newest text yet.
We have the bill in the GoToWebinar dashboard. Caveat, that's not the final one. When we get the final one, we'll shoot that out this afternoon or tomorrow morning. But Lance, what do you think about all these ideas?
Well, Bob, the first one right off the board, the amount of lending authority doesn't just, that's all incredible. But taking the 7A max loan up to $10 million, as a participant lender, Bob, I immediately sit back and say, will they forget to take that back down to 5? I hope so. And the Express program up to $1 million, this is something we've been talking about for a while, and that's very exciting. And I think that's one that'll probably stick. I'm hopeful the $10 million number will. 100% guarantee. As participant lenders, we're all going to be very excited to help small businesses with 100%. But I am going to state, Bob, you and I have both been around a while. We went through the 08, 09, 010 debacle. There was ARA loans. There probably, as this rolls out, there'll be some sort of, whatever this loan program ends up being called, there'll be a special form that we have to complete as participant lenders. I'm just projecting, Bob. And then what you have to realize, whatever these recovery loans are, 100% guaranteed, one of the most important things you're going, as an SBA participant lender, you're going to have to continue to do is make sure you have all the necessary SBA documents in your file, because
they won't find those, because in the bill, I didn't mean to cut you off, Lance, but in the bill, they wanted to streamline some of these documents and some of the requirements. But we can go back to 9/11, and what were the STAR loans?
Oh, yeah, the STAR loans and the ARA loans. And one of the things I experienced, Bob, working in servicing and liquidation, you'd have participant lenders who did an ARA loan, 100% guaranteed. It defaulted 6 years after they did the loan, and they misplaced the ARA form. And in some of those cases, they would get repaired from 100% down to 75. So I'm just saying, as this rolls out, as we get details, it's really critical that we pay attention to those details.
Well, we're going to be all over this. You're probably going to get 2 or 3 email blasts from us. We're going to have John Riossi from American Banker on tomorrow. And he's in Washington, D.C. He's been a great friend of the Coleman Report, and he'll give us an update as well, specifically on the House. I want to switch to Bob Judge. Bob, excuse me.
I'm here.
No, I'm belching in front of everyone. I apologize. Bob, we Bank OZK makes 100% guaranteed emergency loan. What can they do for that on the secondary market?
Well, the way I understand it's going to go is that it's not saleable until after until 12/31, in which case the SBA will then, forgive that portion which is related to, salaries and such. The remainder of that loan can then be sold in a secondary market. So assuming it's a 10-year standard, prime plus 2 3/4, for just as an example, for what it's worth in the secondary market, I think that we have to look at, how bad do defaults get in the industry between now and the end of the year. During the credit crisis, the worst we saw was 8% annualized, where normally they run around 2%, so it was 4 times as bad. I think if you see during this time frame, if defaults, are within that range, I think the secondary market will be favorable towards these loans. The main reason being is that there's not going to be any likelihood of them being voluntarily paid off. In the secondary market, most loans go away because of voluntary payoff, somewhere around 80%. If you remove that as a possibility, you're only concerning yourself with defaults. If defaults stay within a reasonable boundary, and people can assume, okay, I'm expecting a much lower overall prepayment, they're worth a heck of a lot more than if your defaults are expected to be 20, 30, 40% annualized. Now, people will look at these loans as being dead men walking, that once they hit the secondary market, they're just going to eventually go out of business very quickly. So they're going to pay much less for it, if anything. So I think a lot of it depends upon how bad things get. But if things don't get, which I hope and I expect, things don't get, too much worse than the credit crisis for a period of time, they should be able to, I would say you can look at maybe give a wide range, 4 to 8 point premium for something that's like a prime plus 2 3/4, with 9.5 years left. Yeah.
Bob,
did someone say? Yep.
The reason why we asked you on is we've gotten several complaints about Coleman not responding to deferment requests for loans sold to an investor pool. What's going on there?
Well, I think, one thing about, Coleman today is that everybody's working from home at Coleman, so their capability of handling anything is much lower. So I think that's one issue, is that, their ability to handle anything is much reduced. So I can't really speak to necessarily that question as to that issue. But I would say, it might be the fact that you have a lot of people who are sitting at home, who either are working from home, and Coleman is not a company that's, it's not in a business that's well suited to having people work from home. It's they're used to having everybody in a room. There's a lot of paper documents that are coming in for settlements and for pooling, and right now there's no one at Coleman who can accept those documents. So I would say that right now it's probably because the fact that they're scattered throughout the tri-state area here in New York, and just aren't able to deal with everything that's coming down the pike. I mean, that's just my opinion. I don't really know the exact.
I didn't mean to put you on and criticize Coleman. So I'm a lender and I need something processed and they're not responding to me. What do I do?
Well, I would say, if you have a name, a contact there, I would call them. There's always I always use Christopher Anthony. I'm sure he's going to love it if he gets 4,000 phone calls because I said his name. But, he's kind of my go-to guy when I have a problem, and I also pass his name on every time I see him in Dago.
Christopher Anthony, and they're going to think, you're golden.
Well,
Yeah,
hey,
so
Bob,
I guess he won't be a friend anymore. He's got to throw a drink in my face at next nagel. So, but he's kind of the a guy I like to talk to. He's got a lot of years there. He's got a lot of it. He's one of the senior people, and he usually is pretty good about helping solve problems that come across. So I would say Christopher Anthony is a good person to start, unless of course you have someone, an individual person has someone they know better who's there, contact them. But I think Christopher Anthony's a pretty good go-to source.
Bob, I had to turn off the news. How long are they talking about New York being shuttered?
Well, right now, I would say they expect the peak of the virus to be in 6 weeks. So I would, that pushes you, through April, even though the president would like to open it, in the middle of April. I don't think New York City is going to be able to fulfill that because right now we're pretty much, the only things that are open are grocery stores, pharmacies, and some restaurants that are doing like takeout and stuff like that. I mean, the streets are literally, you walk down the street in New York on Broadway, middle of the day, and see two people, which
And the pot shops.
is unheard of.
Lance, what do you think?
So I would say that in New York, it's gonna push probably into late April, May. Which again, I'm not a virologist, I don't know, but looking at the cases pile up, the issues they're having with beds, I don't see you cleaning that mess up in a matter of 3 weeks.
Lance, I have a loan sold to the secondary market. The borrower wants a deferment. We did the benchmark study today that 30% of your borrowers want deferments. How do you handle this situation?
Well, I just want to remind everybody, loans sold on the secondary market, you can do a 90-day deferral without approval of the investor. It's a unilateral servicing action that you have to document. Any deferrals over 90 days are the ones you're going to have to go to Coleman and get investor approval on. So just to remind everybody, if you have loans sold on the secondary market, they're talking about a deferment, encourage them to do a 90-day deferral out of the gate, something you can do unilaterally. So you can go ahead and provide assistance to that small business borrower. Now, on loans not sold in the secondary market, just to remind you, you can do up to a 6-month deferment unilaterally. If you send, another thing I want to tell people, unilateral servicing actions, if you send those to Little Rock or Fresno, they're probably going to send you a message with a copy of the unilateral matrix. It's a unilateral servicing action. And I hear a lot of participant banks struggling with jumping in and providing, not struggling, but hesitant to just jump in. And I know there's some regulatory issues at play. Well, a trouble. So long and short of it, SBA servicing rules state not sold in the secondary market, you can do 6 months unilaterally. Sold on the secondary market, you can do 90 days unilaterally. So, try to encourage your small, it's not to say if you have one sold in the secondary market, Bob, you do a 90-day unilateral deferment. That's not enough. That at that point, you can't go to Coleman for approval on an additional 90 days, after you've done the 90-day unilateral deferment. Remembering the unilateral rules will allow you to help your customers sooner as opposed to trying to contact Coleman.
Well, I suspect when SBA issues these rules, they will focus on deferments, and what you just talked about may very well change. That is my guess. Yeah, let's go to the polls. Just who else is having this problem?
Well, it'll be interesting to see. I would imagine the numbers are going to be pretty high to the yes category.
I think you're right. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah,
Oh, well, I poorly worded that question. I should have said, are you having issues with Coleman responding to your requests? So.
Yeah, I think possibly on Coleman right now, they are accustomed to receiving servicing requests, but not in the volume. I think any of our incredible crowd that's on the call today, Bob, if any of those people are sitting at their desk, you're probably getting calls about deferments all day long. And Coleman is getting a tremendous volume of requests. So I think they'll get their arms around it.
Yeah, and maybe we can have someone from Coleman come on the show and talk about how to solve these issues. How soon do you think SBA will implement the legislation?
Oh, I love this. I have an opinion.
And you are welcome to express it.
Well, my opinion is, of course, once we get it fully passed, I think it'll take at least 3 to 4 weeks to implement. So, the majority of the, I am hopeful. I hope the 28% that says 2 weeks is on point, but I really think that it'll probably take 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah, Brad Trulino the other day said 2 weeks. My personal opinion, they're working overdrive.
Yeah.
They want to do that. This just came out yesterday, Lance. This is going to be near and dear to your heart. Effective immediately, electronic signatures will be where electronic signatures are not feasible. All the SBA lender has to do is accept a scanned copy of a driver's license or a passport or something like that, and a valid original signature on the applicable document within 6 months that they didn't know. We don't want these. I know you all have these challenges of how do we bring everyone into a conference room and you have 5 or 6 people and trying to close the loan. So I think this tells me SBA is being very proactive on how to deal with this situation. Now note, Lance, I'll let you read the last paragraph.
Oh, so you've got to still get the original.
And if you don't do it, they said they're going to, they may deny liability on.
So this is just a short term. I mean, it's a good solution during this period. You can get your borrowers to sign forms electronically. They can sign it, scan it, send it to you, and that's acceptable. We all collect. I mean, I hope everybody, I know when we close loan, we're going to get your driver's license of all the guarantors. So we technically would be able to accept scanned copies of documents. Now, I've got a loan that's closing soon. Our closing attorney's going to meet one-on-one with the borrower with social distancing techniques in place. So still there's some loans closing with the borrower sitting across from, but they're not allowing me to come to that closing.
Hey, this is good news. Corey and Tracy, thank you so much for the feedback. We are currently getting automatic approval on investor deferment requests through Coleman's online customer service portal rather than emailing them directly. So that's the takeaway, is go to their online service portal, and it looks like they are working actively to solve that problem. Lance, I only have about 20 questions here, and we got about 3 minutes. But let's go to the questions that we put up. What should a loan packager charge for an SBA disaster loan?
Guys, I would be incredibly careful with this because, Bob, you and I both know the Inspector General. Part of the reason the fee discussion is important, 159 discussion or 159 form became such a huge issue, was because of some packagers who were charging incredible fees on disaster loans. That, if you remember when the new 159 came out, there was a separate one for disaster loans. What they should charge, I think the new rules that came out, Bob, that talked about acceptable fees to the borrower are something you need to follow. Reasonable. That disaster loan application is not too difficult. I could put a number on it, Bob, if you really want me to. But
your best guess. I mean, it's not in the SOP.
Well,
it may come out in the new legislation. But go ahead, Lance.
Most of these loans are smaller, especially the direct disaster loans that you can apply for online with SBA as we speak. They're smaller. There's less documentation involved in the process. I would be hesitant to charge more than $1,000 for assistance.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be the packager who's charging somebody $3,000 for a $10,000 disaster loan. You're probably going to end up on Katie's Fraud Friday if you do that.
And remember, and even for these loans, two-master rule, you either get paid by the person helping put together the package or by, that's who you get paid by, right? this
Yeah,
SBA.
the simple explanation is the same service cannot be, the borrower can't pay the bank and the third party for the same service.
Great question. What qualifies as a disaster loan? Does your business have to be shut down or simply operating at a lower revenue level?
That's a great question, Bob, because my dad, who's right next door, has two operating businesses here, and we just had that discussion, and he was thinking he would not qualify because he's still open. But I explained that you do not have to be shut down. An example is I've got a convenience store business located by an airport. As you all know, people are not flying. The impact is reduced sales. They absolutely would qualify for a disaster loan. Those businesses like restaurants who have been shut down are going to qualify for a disaster loan. So it does not have to be a closed business. It's a business that has experienced economic injury as a result of this pandemic.
Last question we're going to take today. A lender has escrowed 10% of the express loan for a startup until discretionary cash flow of 1.5 is maintained for 1 year. Is this legal? He needs his money now.
How does escrowing money end up in debt service coverage ratio? It shouldn't. Your debt service coverage ratio is calculated from net profit plus depreciation, interest expense. Typically, I mean, this is a very simple explanation, divided by the amount of debt service requirement. Escrowed money is not part of the debt service coverage calculation. I'm not going to, is it prudent? No. From a legal perspective, it's just not, I'm sorry, it's not part of the calculation. It's not really a legality question. It's not part of calculating debt service coverage ratio.
Yeah, and in today's day and time, I'd give them the money.
Well, and first of all, SBA Express loans don't have to have a 1.5 debt service coverage ratio. In fact, SBA's minimum required debt service coverage ratio on larger loans is 1.15, and on smaller loans, it's 1-to-1.
Hey, I want to talk about, we're coming out with 3 great webinars on these topics, and we will, and the content, you all written the content. We're going to answer all your questions. We're going to talk about, we'll have the legislation done, so we'll know exactly what the answers are to a lot of these questions. Lance is going to talk about servicing and deferring SBA 7A 504 disaster loans. Lance, do we even know what they're going to call this program?
I've heard something like the CARE. Anyway, not yet.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We don't know. And then we're going to talk about the implementation of these new rules. So we're going to have 3 webinars. Our webinars, for those of you who have not attended, they're 75 minutes, and Lance does a great job on leading those. So a little bit different format. We get very specific and answer all the questions we can. And then we're going to do a repeat, and we're not a repeat, but our 2020 edition of hotel and motel financing.
Bob, that's going to be an interesting one given today's climate.
We did this. I did this in 2009, and our expert came in and said the only way you could finance a hotel was through SBA 7A or 504. The world is going to change a lot in the next 4 weeks. It's changed a lot in the last 3 weeks. So, hey, I appreciate your support. I appreciate you coming on, and we'll see you all tomorrow morning. Thank you. Hey, Bob Judge, thank you very much.